All right, guys, so I'm going to make a bunch of videos about my baits because I get a lot of people ask questions, you know, when should I throw this? When do I use this? How do I use this? What kind of gear should I use? And so I'm going to go through each of my baits and kind of do a deep dive. And I'm going to start with the original burrito bait, 7.5-inch line through burrito shad. I've also got a 6-inch jig hook version of that bait. This kind of applies to any of the burrito shads. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little history on the burrito shad. It was 2004, 2005, something like that. That's when I first kind of got into swim baits. Really, the only thing that was available was like West Coast trout baits. Our water is shallow, dirty, and shad is the main forage. Most of the baits that were on the market didn't fish the way I needed them to fish. And I just, you know, the baits that were out there had the jig hook on top and they had line tie on the head of the bait. And so the issue I was having was, you know, I'd throw it out there, hit a piece of wood, and the bait would kick up and it would catch grass on the nose, just stuff like that. Like I had to have a bait that had the line out the nose. That was number one. So if you look at all of my baits, you'll notice, even the 6-inch, there's a direct line from the line tie to the bottom of the bait. There is no 90-degree, you know, nose on the bait where crap's going to get caught. Anything that hits this nose goes under the bait. That was important to me. Number two, you know, I had used a lot of the line throughs and stuff on the market. Most of them had the hook on the bottom, which was no good for me. You know, I had to have the hook on top. So I designed this line through with a special harness to have the hook on the tops. And then there weren't really any shad profile baits. Everything was trout. Everything was slim. Everything was, you know, there wasn't really any that I was aware of. You know, this is before Swim Bait Universe. There weren't many baits out there. So that's why I wanted this bait. I wanted it to sit upright. I wanted to have the line tie at the nose so that it would crawl over. And that's the thing, you know, when you hit a piece of wood with that line tie at the nose, it'll crawl over it. The line will lead that obstruction to the center of the bait and then it'll crawl over it instead of leaning it to the head of the bait where it's going to kick up. So that was a big deal for me. You know, I didn't like my baits doing that. They just got hung up too much. So all those ingredients is where the original burrito shad came from. Initially, I was going to make them out of plastisol. That was my plan. So I was designing this bait on the computer. This was like 2010. You know, 3D printing technology for a home, you know, person working from home desktop, it just was really, really bad. I mean, the precision was horrible. They just looked like crap. So I decided to go the CNC route. I found this DIY CNC machine. It wasn't a very rigid machine, so I couldn't cut metal. That was the big deal. So I had to find some kind of material that I could make molds out of. And I settled on plastic. So I make all my molds out of plastic, which is not common, you know. So the problem with that is you can't pour hot plastisol into it because it melts. So that's why I started using the silicone, because that's just kind of how it evolved, you know, like I was trying to different things and that's what I settled on. So it's a very expensive material to make baits out of. It actually holds up really well though, which to my surprise, you know, I didn't realize it was going to be that great at making baits out of. I mean, there are limitations. The coloring, you have to, the way you have to color the baits and stuff is different. So I hand paint all my baits with a paintbrush. Just a lot of trial and error and fishing and trying stuff and catching fish, and boom, that's where this came from. And then I'll tell you about this guy right here, the 6-inch. The reason I came out with this jig hook version is because of the burrito gill. I was having fish hit the bottom of the bait. I was like, you know what? And you can't really rig a stinger on a line through bait very well. That's when I decided to come out with the jig hook gill, okay? And since it has the line tie at the nose, the same as the jig hook shad, I can run a stinger off of that nose to the bottom of the bait. So that's what I do. That's why this bait exists. That's why the original, the jig hook gill exists, so that you can run a stinger off the bottom of the bait. You can buzz this bait along the surface like that if you want to. You can use it as a buzz bait or a wake bait. That's one advantage that this bait has over the other one. And then, you know, if you want to take that out, that's what's cool about it being at the nose of the bait. I can actually, boom, I can rig it on top like that too. So you have different rigging options with this bait that you don't with the line through. So that's what this bait is really kind of all about. All right, so this is the jig hook, this is the line through. I'm gonna set these baits flat. This is only like 8 or 10 inches of water here, but I'm gonna show you the baits correct themselves and they sit up right on bottom. And that's important because that's what's gonna help that bait come through cover and stuff. You notice the jig hook fell a little faster, more nose down, and that bait I'm fishing in the grass and holes in the grass, you know, up tight against a dock, up against a seawall or something where I need the bait to get down there quicker. And then, you know, the line through, it didn't fall quite as fast, it's a little more level. So that bait, you know, I'm bombing it out long distances and crawling it over road beds and flats and things like that. Another thing about this bait is you can see the nose. Hopefully you can see that. I thinned the profile of this bait out versus this one. And the reason I did that is so that it'll come through grass better. So this bait, you know, if I'm fishing around grass, boom, I grab this one. It'll come through grass really, really well.
All right, so here I'm fishing some shallow patchy grass. It comes up to just below the surface, so I'll let my bait kind of sink down in the holes in the grass, and when I hit a patch, I'll pump the handle like that to pop it out, and that's what gets the fish to bite.
Double sixes, baby.
So in this clip, for some reason, I don't know, I don't remember, I'm using a jig rod. And so I'm throwing this bait on a jig rod in the grass, which is probably not a great idea, but you can see it's like a carpet of grass out there. And I actually snapped this bait out of the grass. It's just below the surface, and that's what gets that fish to turn around and eat it.
Oh, there it is.
I know a lot of guys, you know, they throw a weedless bait anytime they can. The only time I ever throw a weedless bait is if I absolutely have to. This bait will come through grass just as well as most weedless baits, and the hookup ratio is way better. So if I can hook a fish in the grass with a jig rod on a swim bait, you know that it's got a pretty good hookup ratio.
I mean, I'll just throw it out in a patch of grass and rip it out, you know, and keep going. This bait fishes around grass. This one does not. This one gets buried in the grass. So that's why if I'm fishing wood, if I'm fishing rock, most of the time I've got this bait.
All right, so here I make a long bomb cast into the shadows, and I didn't notice there were geese there, and I freak them out. I'm sorry, guys. But you can see all the submerged wood that's down here, so that's what I'm fishing. All these trees and stuff have fallen in the water, so I'm creeping this bait over that submerged wood. So what you do is you just kind of start to feel the rod load up. You know you're getting to a piece of wood, and just slow your retrieve until you get to the top. If you need to give it a little shake, you can do that to get it to go over. And then, you know, I just keep on with my retrieve after it falls. And this fish actually comes from behind a log or something and runs up and sucks the bait in and comes at me. So I have to take up slack to set the hook. But you can see when I get to the end of my retrieve here with the fish, I actually have to hoist this fish up like 8 foot. There's an embankment here, and I can't get down to the fish. So this is the 7.5 line through with the bronze hook, and this is like a 5-pound fish. So I can hoist that fish up 8 feet, no problem whatsoever. And that's how good those hooks are. They really are. Once you hook them in the roof of the mouth like that, they don't come off.
You run the line through the nose of the bait, and it'll come out the top. And then it comes with a bronze treble hook. Take this hook, and I bend 2 of the points in just a touch, like that. Hopefully you can see that. And that it'll cradle the top of the bait just like that. And you can see how the hooks go into those hook bumps. That's what those are designed for. The reason that kind of came to be is because I used to take other baits that I would get on the market, and I would just bury the points in the sides of the bait to get the hook up top like that. And I said, you know what, I need more material there because they would tear out all the time and mess up the bait. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put some bumps there to hold the hook, and that's why those are there. Now, when this bait was originally designed around the decoy quad hook, so this is a size 1 decoy quad hook, and you can see it fits like perfectly up there, okay? So when I originally designed this bait, that's kind of what I was going for. But as I fished the bait more and more, I really like the bronze single hook up instead of the 2 points. When you have those 2 hook points kind of off to the side, you're more likely to get hung up. That's why I don't like that as well. Also, I'll show you this. If you notice where that hook sits up on top of the bait, it's just barely below that fin, when I rig this single hook up the center, it sticks up off the bait high above the fin, okay? So what that means is when I go to set the hook on a fish after they ate it, this is much more likely to catch them in the roof of the mouth. It's going to catch them up higher in the roof of the mouth. Whereas this, since those hook points don't sit up as high, this is a lot more likely to miss, especially since the points are curved in, and actually catch them in the lips. And when you catch them in the lips up there, there's a better chance they're going to come off. So that's why I like to use the bronze hook. That's why I give the bronze hook, is because it catches them in the back of the mouth. Most of the time there's a bone back there, it catches them in there, and they never ever come off if you hook them back there, like never. So the bait slides up the line, the hook's like in that plate in the back of their mouth, and they just never come off. It comes through cover better like this, and it's easier to drive that one hook point versus the two. I've never ever had it bend out on a fish. This is a 1X, a VMC 8650, that's what I send with the bait. Never had it bend out on a fish. But, you know, if you get this thing hung, right? You get this hung, you got 25-pound fluorocarbon or braided line or something. You get this hung in a piece of wood, you bend that hook out, and you get your bait back. With this, you get that stuck in a piece of wood, you're probably not getting your bait back. So there's a lot of advantages to using that bronze hook, and that's why I send that with the bait. So where I'm fishing, the water's pretty dirty. You know, I'm not out in the middle of the water column very often. You know, a lot of times they're on the cover, tight to cover, on the bottom, stuff like that. And that's really where the burrito shads excel. We don't have clear water here where, you know, I can fish the bait out 10 feet from a dock or something, and the basses go, oh, I'm gonna go eat that. They don't do that. You have to pretty much hit them in the face with it. That's what these baits are really designed to do, is in that kind of dirtier water. I mean, you can use them in clear water also, but in that dirtier water, I can actually go in there after the fish. There's a pile of sticks, I can throw my bait in there. Shot it right under there in the pile of sticks. And just walk it out nice and slow. You know, if you feel it kind of load up, just shake it a little bit, it comes up right over that stuff. Right out. And that's what this bait's all about right there. Fishing it anywhere. You can fish this thing anywhere. I got to be in that strike zone, and that's what these baits allow me to do. They're kind of like all-terrain baits, you know. Right over that stuff. Sometimes when you're on the bottom, let's say you're fishing a little deeper, 10 foot, you know, these baits really do well down to about, I don't know, 5 feet on average. That's kind of where I fish them, down into 5 foot. But if you want to go deeper, what I do is I actually add nail weights to this bait. So I used to make heavier versions of this, but thing is with the heavier version, you're kind of limited. You know, you can't really fish it up shallow as much. It's going to get hung up. You know, the more something weighs, the more you're going to get hung up. So my goal when I fish a bait like this is to keep the bait as light as I can so that I can still feel the bottom, but I'm not digging in and getting hung up. You know, if you're on shore, you can throw it out there in 10 foot because you're stationary, you know. But if you're in a boat and you're drifting around, it'll pull the bait up. So all you got to do is just, you can feel the bottom of this bait. There's a core in there, right there. That's the end of it. So just throw some nail weights in there. Boom, boom. You can put nail weights in the cheeks. Tungsten nail weights, 2 or 3 nail weights, and you'll get that bait down to 20 foot if you want to. This is kind of a cool thing made by Mustad, but it's kind of got like a little button on the bottom of tungsten. So these are really pretty heavy. So these are great, you know, if you want to take this bait and screw that in there, and then you got quite a bit of weight on there. I'm not sure how much these weigh, but they're probably like an 1/8 ounce or more. And so you can really, you know, put 2 of these in there and you can get down to 30 foot if you want to.